This isn't a guess, and it's not even really a bold statement. It's just what needs to happen. The Steelers have to show up on offense. Not just show up and be respectable. They need to move the chains. They need to light up the scoreboard. They need to do it consistently, and they need to do it a lot. Because when you look at who they're facing this Thursday night, yes, that Bengals team, it's not just a struggling defense. It's one of the worst defensive units in the entire league right now. Let's be clear. This is the type of game that tells you who's ready to level up. The Bengals are down bad, and I'm not just talking about rankings on a spreadsheet. I'm talking about a defense that looks beat up, broken down, and basically hanging on by a thread. You want numbers? They're sitting at number 31 in total defense. That's out of 32 teams, in case anybody forgot how the math works in the NFL. They're giving up close to 400 yards per game. That's not a typo. Only the Cowboys are doing worse in that category, and Cincinnati is just barely behind them. That's not exactly elite company. And it doesn't stop there. Pass defense? Same story. They're second worst in the league, allowing over 250 yards through the air every single week. Run defense? Not much better. Bottom 5 again. And when it comes to keeping teams off the scoreboard, they're giving up over 30 points per game. Let that sink in. 30 points. That's not total. That's just what the defense is surrendering. So yeah, it's not just about being banged up. It's about being bad. And if Trey Hendrickson isn't healthy enough to go on Thursday, which looks like a real possibility, then their one true defensive star won't even be out there trying to stop the bleeding. So with all of that in mind, there's really only one acceptable outcome here. The Steelers need to treat this like a statement game. A measuring stick kind of night where you prove to the league, and maybe to yourselves, that this offense is starting to evolve into something dangerous. Not explosive just yet, but threatening. Balanced. Capable. Because we already saw the early signs against Cleveland. And that Browns defense? That's a real one. One of the best in football right now. Still top 3 even after the loss. And yet Pittsburgh found ways to move the ball against them. On the ground, through the air, with different looks and different weapons. It wasn't perfect, and yeah, it started slow with 3 field goals early on. But in the second half, that's where things opened up. Arthur Smith, you can say what you want about how things started this season, but against the Browns, he finally let loose. He wasn't playing it safe. He didn't shrink the playbook. He didn't go conservative just to manage a shaky offensive line or avoid putting pressure on his quarterback. He brought out the full thing. He used everybody, every receiver, every tight end. He hit every level of the field. Short passes, intermediate routes, deep shots, sideline throws, middle of the field plays, all of it. He even dialed up a touchdown to his number 4 tight end. You don't do that unless you're cooking. You don't do that unless you believe your offense can hang. And more importantly, you don't do that unless you believe your quarterback can make it happen. So now the bar has been set. Not sky high. Not unrealistic. Just fair. Just competitive. And this Thursday night is the perfect opportunity to raise that bar a little higher. This isn't Cleveland's defense. This isn't a top 5 unit. This is the Bengals. The same Bengals who've been vulnerable against just about every kind of offensive attack. And it's not just a coincidence. They've been terrible against tight ends all season. That's a known thing around the league. So if you got a group of tight ends like Pittsburgh does, and you've got a coordinator willing to get creative with them, what's stopping you from attacking that weakness from the first snap? Yes, Calvin Austin is out. Yes, the wide receiver depth still raises a few questions. But the guys who are healthy, especially that group of tight ends, they've got real talent. And it's not just about matchups. It's about mindset. This game is the moment to start building that identity. Stop waiting around for the perfect conditions or the perfect roster or the perfect play call. Go out there and take what's being given. Because this Bengals defense, they're handing you an opportunity. And let's not get caught up in what the Bengals are doing on offense. Not this week. Burrow's out. Key guys are missing. It's not about them. It's about Pittsburgh showing they can be the aggressors. That they can be the ones who punch first. Because this team has flirted with progress all year. Flashes of potential. Drive that looked like they were building towards something. But this game? This has to be the one where they don't just flash. They fire. Because think about what's changed in the last couple of weeks. That offensive identity that's been so elusive, it's starting to take shape. Slowly, sure, but it's happening. You can see it in how the formations are being called. You can feel in how Smith is adjusting. He's not locking into the same conservative sets. He's not just calling plays to survive. He's calling plays to strike. And even more encouraging, he's doing it while still accounting for the offensive line issues that haven't gone away. That's growth. That's game planning. That's what you want from a coordinator who came in with a reputation for being able to scheme around limitations. And give credit where it's due. The players are responding. The execution has improved. The receivers are getting separation. The backs are hitting their lanes. The tight end are doing it all, blocking, catching, scoring. And most importantly, the quarterback is getting the ball out clean. He's seeing the field. He's not just managing the game. He's starting to direct it. Now look, nobody's crowning the Steelers as elite just yet. This isn't about overhyping a couple of decent performances. It's about recognizing momentum, seeing the pattern, watching a team that was stuck in neutral finally hit the gas and build some rhythm. And with a short week, there's no time to dwell on Sunday. There's barely time to breathe, but that might actually work in their favor. Momentum can be a beautiful thing when you don't stop to overthink it. So if you're the Steelers right now, the mission is simple. Go out there and do what you're supposed to do. Don't play down to the opponent. Don't let up. Don't settle for field goals when the end zone is wide open. You've got the weapons. You got the playbook. You got a defense across from you that looks like it's already waving the white flag. Score early, score often, and score in a way that makes the rest of the league take notice. Because after weeks of scratching and clawing just to stay in games, this is a chance to dominate one. Not because the Bengals are a pushover in every sense. They've still got those flashy wide receivers and some pride to play for. But because the matchup leans so heavily in Pittsburgh's favor that anything less than 30 points would feel like a missed opportunity. And that's not even being greedy. That's just realistic. That's the standard when the opponent can't stop the pass, can't slow down the run, and can't keep anyone out of the end zone. So don't let up. Don't hold back. Treat it like a playoff game, because down the stretch, that's exactly the kind of energy this team is going to need. There's something else that can't be overlooked when talking about this recent spark from the Steelers, and that's the change in attitude from the top down. 4 years now, one of the biggest criticisms surrounding Mike Tomlin has been his reluctance to adapt. Whether it was sticking with certain players too long, resisting major philosophical shifts, or just flat out refusing to alter game plans based on opponents, the narrative has followed him. He's been stubborn. He's been set in his ways. And let's be honest, there's been plenty of truth in that. But something shifted, something real, and it wasn't subtle. It happened overseas, of all places in Dublin. That game wasn't just a matchup against another AFC opponent. It became a moment where Tomlin, for whatever reason, flipped the switch. Maybe it was the environment. Maybe it was the pressure. Maybe it was the memory of the Rooney legacy in Ireland. Maybe it was just the right time. Whatever it was, Tomlin didn't just make a few tweaks. He pulled out the toolbox and rebuilt part of the machine. He used Spencer Anderson as a sixth offensive lineman. Think about that. This wasn't a little adjustment. That's major. That's changing the entire structure of how you protect the quarterback and run the football. That move alone signaled something fans have been begging for: willingness to do things differently. Not just hoping the players would execute better. Not just repeating the same old cliches about tackling and blocking. No, this was tactical. This was coaching. More than a third of the offensive snaps featured max protection. That is unheard of under Tomlin. That is not the kind of thing you do unless you've accepted that what worked in the past just doesn't cut it anymore. And that, in itself, deserves recognition. Because for all the talk about how this team needed to modernize, to evolve offensively, it always had to start with the head coach allowing those changes to happen. This isn't about throwing praise around just for the sake of it. It's about being fair. It's about acknowledging that when a coach makes bold moves and those decisions lead to visible improvement, you give him his due. And that's what happened. There's been no official word, no leaked conversation that says Art Rooney had some dramatic late-night meeting with Tomlin to push for a new direction. Could that have happened behind closed doors? Sure. But from the outside looking in, what we saw was a team and a coach that traveled thousands of miles, faced a tough opponent, and came out with a strategy that looked nothing like the stale approach that had been dragging them down all season. Even the personnel usage was different. Guys were being moved around in new ways. The formations looked fresh. The tempo was more urgent. The offense looked like it had purpose, like it was trying to do more than just hold onto the football. And as fans, as analysts, as people who follow this team week in and week out, that's all anyone has ever really asked for. Not miracles, not 40-point blowouts, just intent, just effort, just change when change is clearly needed. And for once, Tomlin delivered that. That's not nothing. There's also something to be said for how this team has handled the internal noise. Because it was getting loud. Players weren't just frustrated. They were quietly letting it be known that things weren't working, that the schemes weren't putting them in position to succeed, that what they were being asked to do just didn't line up with the situations on the field. And in the NFL, that kind of dissatisfaction doesn't just go away. It lingers. It festers. It turns locker rooms against coaching staffs. But here's what's wild. Instead of doubling down and telling the players to fall in line, the coaching staff listened. They adapted, and it worked. Now, is that going to be enough to carry this team deep into January? That's still way too early to say. But it is enough to change the tone of the season. It's enough to quiet some of the doubt. And more than anything, it's enough to inject belief back into a locker room that was starting to question whether this was going anywhere at all. So when you look ahead to the Bengals game, it's not just about the matchup on paper. It's about continuing that forward momentum. It's about proving that what happened against the Browns, and even before that, the foundational work that was laid, wasn't just a one-off. That it wasn't just the team catching lightning in a bottle. Because the worst thing you can do after taking a step forward is to immediately fall back into old habits. And unfortunately, this franchise has done that before. This week is about reinforcement, cementing that identity, sticking with the things that worked and expanding them, not getting too cute, not overthinking it, but also not shrinking from the opportunity to dominate. This Bengals defense isn't going to scare anyone. The only thing that can stop the Steelers in this matchup is the Steelers themselves. If they show up tentative, if they take the foot off the gas, if they play not to lose instead of playing to win, then that opens the door for a team they should be burying. But before we dive in, don't forget to subscribe to Steelers Nation Central and hit the like button on this video. Your support helps us keep bringing you the latest updates on the Pittsburgh Steelers. And don't forget to share your thoughts on the news in the comments below. Whispers are growing louder in Pittsburgh this week, and it's all centered on a potential shakeup that could redefine the Steelers' playbook. According to sources close to the team, defensive mastermind Mike Tomlin has finally convinced one of the organization's most dynamic players, SIMMONS, to embrace a new role, one that could unlock a level of versatility Pittsburgh hasn't seen in years. SIMMONS, known for his athleticism and football IQ, has long been a force on the field, but his talents have often been limited by rigid positional assignments. Now, under Tomlin's guidance, there's talk that he could be unleashed in ways that make opposing offenses scramble. The idea is not just to strengthen the defensive line or the secondary, but to reimagine the Steelers' entire defensive scheme around his flexibility. Inside sources suggest that practices over the past few weeks have been electric, with SIMMONS experimenting in hybrid roles, lining up in coverage one snap, rushing the passer the next. Coaches have been reportedly thrilled with the results, noting that his ability to read the field and switch responsibilities mid-play has opened up possibilities previously considered too risky. Fans, meanwhile, are buzzing online, speculating how this could alter Pittsburgh's identity. Could we be seeing a Steelers team that blends classic hard-hitting defense with modern unpredictability? Some analysts caution that this remains in the rumor stage, and Tomlin has a history of keeping his cards close to the vest. Yet, the energy around the team is palpable. If SIMMONS fully buys into this new approach, Pittsburgh could debut a defense that isn't just reactive, but aggressively versatile, confusing quarterbacks and forcing mistakes in ways that could reshape the AFC landscape. For now, all eyes are on the upcoming games and, more importantly, on the subtle hints from Tomlin and SIMMONS during interviews. One thing is certain. If this rumor proves true, the Steelers may have found a secret weapon in a player they've always known was special. A whisper in the locker room could soon become a roar across the league. That's it for this update. If you enjoyed the video and want to keep receiving exclusive news about the Pittsburgh Steelers, make sure to subscribe to Steelers Nation Central and give this video a like. We always look forward to hearing your comments and opinions. See you in the next video.